Hey, what's up everyone? It's Aladrian. I'm super excited to be at Tempo today to talk to you about some things that I've learned in my first year as a new design leader. But before we jump in, wanted to just give a shout out to the whole Lead with Tempo team. Rachel, Alex, thank you so much for your attention and intention of bringing this community together, and look forward to the rest of the talks and the rest of the conference. If we haven't met yet, my name is Aladrian Goods, and I am a content design manager at Intuit, where I lead a content design team that is contributing to the development and design of the virtual expert platform. And I'm based here in San Diego, California. So let's start with the story. I would love to talk to you all about the inception of this talk. And to do that, I'm gonna bring you on campus to Intuit. So it was a day, maybe about a year ago. I was a couple months into my new role as a senior content design manager, and I ran into a familiar face in the courtyard. It happened to be the VP of design from my previous team, James Helms, and it was the first time we had seen each other since the pandemic, and he casually asked me so what's up, how's it going? And me looking around the resort-like campus, I looked up to the sky, not a cloud in the sky. It was 72 degrees. And I, effectively moved from plain old Texas to San Diego, California. So I responded, listen, I'm living the dream, growing through some things, but all is well. He looked at me quickly and said, really growing through some things? How's it really going? To which I could only respond, dude, this is hard, okay? And from that conversation and the walk around this path later that day, some of the reflections and insights were the kind of building blocks for the conversation that we're gonna have here today. And listen, this is very much a conversation. I know this is a pre-recorded talk. It's me talking at you. You're watching this recording, but I'm present. I'm in the chat. Please use the chat. If you have questions, ask them. We'll get to them at the end of our time here together live. And use your reactions, use your emojis, and get ready for a whole lot of gifts. All right. So one thing I've known about leadership is that you don't need a title to lead, because leadership is about action and not titles. How many times have we heard, hey, well, if leadership could only do something like this, or thinking that someone has a higher title than you, then they are supposed to be leading? Well, yes, I think that's correct, but it's a little bit of a disempowering context, because it puts leadership out there. And what I would like to challenge is that leadership can happen anywhere. And no matter where you're at, no matter what your title is, that anyone could be a leader. Because leader is about taking action to create space for other people to contribute to a goal because they want to, not because you told them to. So let's talk about actions. In this section, I'm going to talk a lot about some things that I did in my first 92 full year of being a leader, and some of the expectations around what it meant to be a content design leader or a design leader in general, and the actual reality of what that looks like. All right, so for the first one, I heard so many times that as an IC, you're responsible for the work and the craft and being the sort of keeper of the craft. And the further you go up in design leadership, the less craft-based work you'll actually do. While I wish that was true, I swiftly learned that that's not at all the case here. Maybe once you get to a director or, a head of design, that's true. But from the move from a senior individual contributor to a senior manager is about 2 steps at Intuit. So I was excited. I said, wow, I don't expect to do any real work. And even said that verbally to one of my new team members. And look, just so you know, don't say that verbally. That's not the case, because those folks are expecting you to do work. In fact, it's not even an expectation. It's almost a requirement that senior managers with teams under 5 are using up to 70% of their time doing individual contributor work. Now, for me being a new manager, that felt just absolutely ridiculous and extremely unrealistic for me to do. I was on a team of 1. There was about 20 plus designers that my team was expected to support. I was expected to hire a team. I was expected to understand the business, understand the new goals, and all these things. And it felt completely overwhelming. Yet I still tried to do it. I tried to, attend design reviews and grooming sessions. And honestly, it was just far too much. So what I learned is that it's really not about being in the weeds so much when you become a design leader, or even expected as you become a senior or a principal level designer. It's about the end-to-end strategy and how you can create frameworks and decks, and well, not just decks, but like frameworks and playbooks to provide to the team to give them the parameters and tools to actually do the work, until we have the folks who can be dedicated to looking at every single screen and every single string within the space. So the reality is, I see work will happen. Just focus on the strategy. Now, let's move on to the second expectation I had. One of the things that attracted me to design leadership is that the fact that I had the power to hire people, right? So in my mind, I'm like, oh, hiring is easy money. I can hire whoever I want, whenever I want, and the money and opportunity will be there because I have 2 headcount. I have one for a full-time manager or full-time senior designer, and one for a contractor. And let me tell you, I found out rather quickly that is a joke. Okay, hiring is very much a process. It's a process, and full-time hiring has its own specific process, and contracting has its own specific process and rules of engagement. So I'll tell you a story. As an IC, there was a moment where a friend of mine said, hey, I tell people you're the only Black female designer at Intuit. And I looked and I was like, nah, that can't possibly be true. And I took the time, I looked through our internal Rolodex of folks who had designer in their title, and he wasn't too far off from the truth. And that really triggered something in me as an individual contributor that, hey, our teams are talking a lot about diversity, equity, and inclusion, but the speed to which folks are going from, knowing about Intuit and us advocating for these different communities to interview at Intuit was not lining up with the number of people, you know what I'm saying? So I was very critical of our leadership at the time. Like, how are you talking this big game, but not really delivering, or I'm not seeing the results? And quickly, let me tell you, as soon as I became a design manager who had to go through the process of hiring, I realized that it takes an act of God. I'm not kidding you, for hiring to actually occur, right? And I talked to my aunt who leads a HR team, and she said, listen, niece, yes, you should hire for diversity, but don't ever hire only for diversity. Hire for talent, and you'll always be in good shape. And what I also learned from that is that, yeah, you're right. Like, pinpointing the focus and just looking for one specific needle in the haystack made my job a lot harder in finding talent. But I also realized that it's not just about hiring for these specific characteristics. It's about creating equitable processes, the right partnerships, and showing up in the places where diverse talent can see you as a potential employer, and for me to represent as a leader to attract those folks in addition to creating space for people of all folks to thrive and be successful. And yeah, I also realized that hey, it's a process. It takes time. It takes buy-in, it takes negotiation, especially in times like we're in now where headcount is being taken away or staying flat. Everything is scrutinized. So knowing what the process is, knowing what the connection to this role the connection this role has to business goals is extremely important. And then the last thing is like always be recruiting. So I'm not hiring now, but you can check out intuit.careers.com. And if anything shows up that piques your interest, please do let me know. Okay. So the next one, this one was a big one for me because switching into leadership is really a shift in identity. I was the first in-product content designer on the team that I joined. So I had the privilege of my opinion was really the only opinion. My success was really the success of the craft of the projects and the energy that I put in. I could easily see the outputs that would come out. And what I learned pretty quickly is that what got me to leadership and what success looked like there is not what's going to keep me in leadership and what's going to show up as success. As soon as I hired my team, I did hire two really talented designers, Ali and Jeff. Shout out to them. They're doing a great job of helping folks experience the value of content design. They're advocating, they're leading. They're not really advocating as much. They're advocating for the customers. They're leading strategy sessions. They're doing research. They're, of course, doing writing, but they're actually helping people experience the value of content design. And I started to feel like, man, my team is outshining me. I'm so used to being the one who's getting the credit or the one who's getting the recognition. But now it's like these folks who are showing up and doing the thing. And I really felt like, man, like, where is it that I'm doing well and how am I contributing to this? And yeah, the reality is like when my team succeeds, I'm successful. And also the measurement of success as a manager is way different from being an individual contributor. Like things like alignment, priorities, process are now new measurements of success. Getting the right people to have the right conversation at the right time and getting a desirable result is now a new measure of success. So the bar changes, the bar shifts a little bit. And I didn't really have the words to express or understand how that actually has happened until I heard about the design leadership dip from Andy Pollane. Andy Pollane is a design leader and mentor, and he writes about like design leadership as well as design. He has a design podcast that you should check out too. And he came and spoke to our team earlier this year. And this concept has been etched in my mind since that moment because it really gave me the language to understand the shift I was feeling moving from an individual contributor to a design manager. And basically the leadership dip is essentially the intersection where you're moving out from being the primary and like the subject matter expert in your craft and the having that control and wisdom over your design tools to where you're not really good at design leadership, but your proficiency is going up. So you're not really good, but you're not really bad either. And that's where that dip is where your confidence can take a huge hit. Imposter syndrome can start to slip in, and then feeling like you're, not doing anything. And that's how I felt, honestly. Like my team was crushing it. They didn't really need me to do anything. Their partners were happy and satisfied with the work that was going out. Our senior leadership team had been acknowledging the value of content design, and I felt like I wasn't doing anything. And I was grateful to have this language about the dip to help me frame that, it's not that you're not good at content design or you're not a valuable member to the team. It's really about this shift. So I want to get into talking about like how to navigate the dip and get a grip as a new leader. So one of my favorite movies ever, Everything Everywhere All at Once. No worries, there won't be any spoilers here, but I love this image because this is a moment where Michelle Yeoh's character is kind of reflecting and seeing like all the different versions of herself. And it's a little perplexed, but also a little bit like, what's happening? And I did feel like this in sometimes, like all the versions of me being a leader or being a designer that led up to me being this new identity of design manager and design leader. It felt a little scary. It felt like they were being abandoned or like being kind of transformed in a way. And I didn't really know where to lean in so far. But I'm here to tell you, look, you don't have to know or do everything everywhere all at once, okay? Especially when you're first transitioning. In my first 90 days, I think in day 3, I was very critical about the team, very critical about the culture, kind of like a shock that I left a really good situation and now I've been put into a new situation with all new folks, with all new problems and all new vibes and new opportunities that it really took for one of my managers and colleagues to sit me down and be like, look, it's been day 3, give it some time. So I'm here to tell you, like, the actions you should do are take your time, okay? Be quick to listen and slow to respond. Now, note your observations. So when you do have a chance to respond, you can respond and not react, because that's what I did. I reacted. And then when it comes to prioritization, be ruthless with your yes and gracious when you have to say no. As a new leader, especially coming into a team that may have had, in my case, a team that had content design as a craft, but the ratios weren't really there. And the content design leader had stepped away from the company. People knew that they needed it, but they didn't have the resources to do it. So yes, know what you're going to say yes to and what you can commit to. And then when you have to say no, be gracious, but be firm. And some of the resources that really helped me, there's a few books here, and The First 90 Days by Michael J. Watkins is one of my absolute favorites. I 10 out of 10 recommend it whenever you're getting into a new role, a new season, or even, starting at a new company. It'll help frame how to approach your first 30 days, your 60 days, and your 90 days before you jump in to whatever role at whatever level. The Design Leader Studio is a great tool founded by Martin Redding, who's also speaking at this conference here today. Multipliers is a great book that talks about how the best leaders make everyone else smarter. And Reimagining Design by Kevin G. Bethune is a great story, or not really story, but great framework for cross-functional collaboration to drive innovation. Next, you got to find your folks. I'm a huge fan of Abbott Elementary. If you know anything about the show, Janine Teagues, she's a super exciting young teacher, and Barbara Howard is like the OG who has all the wisdom and has been at the school for a very long time. And I think it's important for us to make those connections and level up our support. So know that you're not alone, but you do have to find your people and connect. Leveling up your support system can look like connecting with folks at your level and above, and both inside and outside your organization. Of course, the folks inside your organization are going to have the insight and the understanding of how things move, the nuances, the business, etc. But folks outside will be able to provide a unique perspective to some of the challenges that they're dealing with, as well as give you a new perspective on how you may approach a similar problem. And then I also invite you to reimagine yourself and reflect on your identity as a leader and your values and goals, because this is essentially an identity shift, and it is taking you will need to take that time to be intentional with how you show up. And a coach is someone who can really help you with that as well. Here's some of the communities that I'm a part of. One thing I would also recommend is like creating an internal space for new managers or like seasoned managers to get connected, to ask the dumb questions and get feedback and get that perspective. And I think a lot of the things that I've learned have been because we have leaders in content design at Intuit, and a bunch of new leaders emerge where we can kind of share our experiences and get that critical feedback and that critical assurance that like, hey, you're not bugging, you're not wilding out. Like, we've experienced that too. And then attend conferences like this one and check out Button. If you haven't heard of it, they're doing a content design leadership track actually for the first time this year at the 2023 conference in Portland, Oregon. Last but not least, you got to take care of yourself, okay? Got to take care of yourself, because as you go, your team goes. Role modeling boundaries, rest, and calm is essential to prevent a culture of burnout for content designers. Because as we all know, content designers are usually understaffed and overworked. But if you're a leader in this space, it's really up to you to protect your team and protect yourself by role modeling those boundaries, taking your PTO, resting when you're sick. And one thing I want to say about boundaries is that, look, managers, you do have a lot to do, but your role is not to be the therapist or the person who's taking on all the emotional labor of your direct reports. Now, I value radical transparency on my team, so I'm pretty direct with my team and let them know what the resources they have available are to them. Obviously, be empathetic and understanding of what they're going through or what they're bringing, but you also have to protect your energy as well. So I do that by drinking water, going to therapy, and making sure I get some exercise. Definitely use your PTO. In fact, I'm on my way to Japan tomorrow after recording this talk, and I'm super excited to take 2 weeks off. And you'll start to see that when you rest and you invest in your growth and development, your team will take on those sort of characteristics as well. And here's some resources that you can read through. One thing I wanted to point out is the Better Up coaching platform was a huge help for me finding a coach that can help with anything from career development to critical conversations and everything in between. So that's all I got for y'all today. I know that content design is changing, it's growing. I'm super excited about this shift from advocacy and begging for our seat at the table to leadership, to taking that seat and taking action to lead. And you know what that is? That's growth. Like my girl Kelly said, that's growth. And again, leaving you with this one thought: leadership is action, not a title. Thank you so much for your attention and engagement here today. I'm so excited to hear your questions and see what sparked the conversation, and also check out the actions you all take as the next leaders in content design. Thanks so much. I'll see you in a bit. Peace.